Do you wish you had some kind of cheat guide before you became an adult? Things that school or maybe your parents don't teach you? Then check out the book called Adulting 101, My First Apartment and Car. Just search Adulting 101, My First Apartment and Car on Amazon. You can find it there. And it's about the basic things that we take for granted, like the common skill of checking apartment complexes at night before you sign your lease, or doing a background check on your roommate before you move in together, or not co-signing for something. The book is designed to help those parents or guardians help their young ones transition from their home successfully. Whether that is getting a roommate, how to spot a really crappy landlord, or how not to buy an awful car, these are some of the things that they've learned throughout their own personal experiences. So check out Adulting 101, My First Apartment and Car on Amazon and give your kids the cheat codes to things that we wish we had. Check out Adulting 101, Things I Wish I Knew, My First Apartment. It's available on Amazon or at stoverconsulting.net. That's STOVER consulting.net. It has a ton more information on that website. Go check it out today.
This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is the one that everybody wants, me.
Becky Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my idol. You're going to acknowledge me.
Welcome to the current state of WWE, everybody. We've got Anthony DeMarco with us tonight, and we're going to be breaking down a topic or two. And tonight, we're going to be focusing in our sights on Bray Wyatt and what exactly could be going on, as it seems like we're in the same position we were when he debuted. But Anthony, welcome back to the show. I'm ready for this one.
Yeah, man, I'm ready for it too. And it's kind of always interesting to break down pay-per-views, or not pay-per-views, sorry. I was still thinking about the show I did on Retro last Friday. But it's always interesting to break down a week in WWE in December, especially when there isn't a December pay-per-view. Because as you mentioned on your weekend review, it feels like we're still a long ways away from the Royal Rumble. And I would imagine until after the holidays, we're going to be in a holding pattern. So you're really just trying to get through these December weeks until you really could feel like you're entering the Royal Rumble season and by extension, WrestleMania season.
Yeah, that's what this is like. I mean, every year we come to this, and especially like you just mentioned, with no pay-per-view, it's exceptionally boring right now. And I don't mean boring in a way that's unwatchable, just kind of like, let's get through the weeks to get to the Rumble. And the next big thing is really John Cena's return that was announced on SmackDown for December 30th in Tampa. So, that's a topic in and of itself of who can interrupt him. I'd imagine that's something leading to WrestleMania for John Cena. But that's the next landmark that you can say, okay, you can circle that date on the calendar as far as the next big thing that's happening if there's no premium live events. But let's talk about Bray Wyatt, because as I mentioned a minute ago, I just feel like we're kind of in the same position we were when he debuted, like 2 months ago? Re-debuted, returned. And I don't know if I'm reaching a point of boredom or just complacency or impatience or a combination of all of it, because the only thing that we've learned about Bray Wyatt is he has either this alter ego or this follower that's masked named Uncle Howdy, and he's the one doing the attacks. Other than that, unless you're going to sit and break down every promo he does, I don't have the time for that. Most of us don't. I don't know what else has happened with Bray Wyatt. Am I missing something here?
I've seen a lot of criticism about Bray Wyatt over the last couple weeks or so, and to be honest, I hadn't really thought about it, because every time he's on WWE programming or cutting a promo, he captivates me. Like, he's a very captivating guy. And I think I get lost in it when he's talking and cutting a promo because he is so well-spoken. He's so believable. It feels like he's very honest and genuine when he speaks to us on the microphone. But then when you really break it down what he's done in over 2 months since returning back at Extreme Rules in October, And as you mentioned, it's not a whole lot of advancement. Yes, he's gotten involved in with LA Knight, and I think LA Knight has been kind of a revelation under Triple H on SmackDown. I would argue that under Triple H's, I guess, booking decisions or returns, and I guess in some way LA Knight was kind of a return because he was Max Dupree under Vince McMahon. He's been the most successful Triple H guy, and that's kind of breathed some fresh life into the Bray Wyatt story. But the fact that he hasn't wrestled a match yet, he really hasn't explained anything in the way of who Uncle Howdy is. It is starting to get a little bit redundant. Now, look, I'm still willing to give it the benefit of the doubt because I do think that they're trying the long game here, and I'm a guy who's a proponent of a slow burn. But I do believe that they eventually have to get things rolling here. And I think you mentioned on your weekend review that it's getting to the point now where the longer you go here, the harder you're going to make the payoff for whoever Uncle Howdy is more unattainable. And I don't know if you could wait all the way to the Rumble. You're 5 or 6 weeks out right now from the Royal Rumble. I don't think we could do another month plus of just this kind of treading water with this angle. And I think you have to get Bray Wyatt in a wrestling ring because I've seen a lot of kind of comments down this road about, you know, if he wants to just tell stories, why doesn't he just go be like a B-level horror movie producer, director, or actor, all three? And look, I have a big appreciation for the way Bray Wyatt thinks the wrestling business, and I have all the time in the world for it. But at a certain point, you kind of have to start telling a story in the ring, and it can't just all be speaking in backwards riddles.
No, it can't. You right now, again, that is the one thing that he has going for him, that he's always had going for him outside of being Husky Harris. He has been captivating from day one, and that has really been able to carry him through his career. While he may not be the quote unquote best wrestler WWE has, he certainly doesn't have the body Vince used to love. He doesn't have the general size. He's a big guy, but he doesn't have that look that Vince liked, but he's got captivating. He's got that it, and then that it is something that overshadows any possible weaknesses you have. But at some point, you know, that captivation, that it factor you have has to be utilized forward. You can't just live on the kind of like your I don't want to say he's not a one-trick pony, but this is clearly his biggest strength is his ability to emote and ability to speak, and the words he says are all so intentionally chosen. You could sit and dissect it for hours. That is his biggest strength, and it has carried him this far. And people continue to cheer for him. But I would argue he's kind of mildly being cheered when he does appear. I'm probably downplaying that. He gets a very positive reaction, but I guess compared to what I feel like he should be getting, it's not as strong. Now, when you look at the LA Knight thing, I actually look forward to seeing LA Knight more. I mean, you just hit it on the head. Like, what I see from LA Knight is night and day from what I saw with Max Dupree. LA Knight is confident. I feel like I know who he is with only seeing him a month or two with this whole interaction with Bray. And he feels like he's not cowering from Bray. He's standing up for himself. You know, he's not playing stupid. He says, no, I know it's you, Bray. You can take the mask, and I told you where you can stick your puppets. All this. It's a great character. I love the LA Knight character. So that to me is a bigger side effect, a bigger benefit than I thought that they could come away with this whole thing. My point is that I think right now Bray Wyatt, that regardless of how you feel about the character, it's just time to take that next step. I don't need the full reveal. I just need whatever that next step is to happen soon. And I know that on Raw, I'm not going to try to spoil anything too much. So if anybody doesn't want to hear any spoilers at all, here's your warning. But there is a little bit more with Alexa Bliss that happens. I'll leave it at that. So there is progression on Raw indirectly with Alexa Bliss.
So, I mean, they're definitely playing a super long game here. And I think that the biggest issue I have with it right now is that he has to wrestle. Like, if they were doing all this, but telling a story in the ring with Bray Wyatt, like, don't you think it'd be more digestible and you'd be more patient in terms of the long-term storytelling here?
Oh God, yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I know that all of this right now is character development, and I can appreciate that. And I actually said at one point, it's good. There's no distractions. It's just developing Bray. But we've reached that tipping point for me where like I need to see him in the ring. Like have a match with somebody. I would imagine it's going to be LA Knight. It has to be his first match here. But yeah, I'm ready for him to be in ring. Like, even if it's, a 5-6 minute match, just to see what he can do. Does he have new moves? What's his demeanor like? What's his entrance like? Yeah, I mean, I'm ready for in-ring. You just said it before that if I wanted to see Bray Wyatt just do narration, I could have him, narrate a story. And, I don't need that right now. I need to see wrestling on my wrestling show.
Yeah, and look, I have all the time in the world for Bray Wyatt storytelling. I really truly believe that, like, he is kind of like the outlier, even for traditional wrestling fans. Like, you hear Jim Cornette talk about him, that he's very against this hokey pokey or whatever, but he still has time for Bray Wyatt because of how good he is on the mic. He captivates you in the moment. Even if you like take a step back after the segment is done or after SmackDown is done and say, Jesus Christ, like, once again, like, we're just here left, like, with no advancement. In the moment, you're left watching, or anytime there's like a cut scene and it's Uncle Howdy referring to, he knows what Bray Wyatt was and this, that, and the other thing. It captivates you, but you can't just rely on that story, because as good as that is, and as good as it is in terms of the entertainment part of WWE, you still need that wrestling part. And, right now it seems like, and I don't want to say this because it's very premature, but as of right now, it kind of seems like Vince McMahon maybe at a point with Bray Wyatt. Like, maybe he was just way too one-dimensional, and which is weird because Vince was always way more about the entertainment side and less about the wrestling side. But in this instance, it feels like, okay, dude, I get it. I love the character development. You make me want to watch you. I want to hear what you have to say. But when you're just kind of speaking in circles in a lot of ways and you're not in the ring, you leave a lot to be desired. Like, I think if he was wrestling matches every week and then you still had everything just stay the same in terms of the progression and the arc that they're telling right now, I just think it would be more stomachable, because at least you would see the advancement in his character in the ring. Maybe they could tell a story that he was shaking the ring rust off. Like, I'm of the belief that Bray Wyatt's going to lose his first match when he returns to the ring, and maybe he'll go on 2 or 3 matches before that he loses before he gets that first W. I think that would be a good story to tell and would kind of hold people off while they get to this long roundabout way for the whole Uncle Howdy character. But because he's not in the ring and you have the kind of like that stagnant approach with Uncle Howdy, I really do feel like people are starting to get tired, and you don't want to have that feeling that Vince may have been right about this guy.
That's the last thing we want. I mean, and the thing is, though, obviously we all know Bray Wyatt had a bunch of mental issues prior to leaving, and the match with Randy Orton and Alexa Bliss at WrestleMania a few years ago before the pandemic was, I mean, it still is to me one of the weirdest, most awful main events that WWE has ever put on, and it was semi-main event, but still, I mean, to be honest, also Bray Wyatt hasn't really had a great WrestleMania moment to my knowledge. Every time he's involved in WrestleMania, the ones that are at least coming to mind, he had a match with Taker that was all right, although he actually injured himself prior to that with his ankle, although he was still able to perform. It was decent, but the Randy Orton match was bad. He had also another match with Randy Orton, I believe, when he burned down Sister Abigail's house in the woods, and I was at WrestleMania 33 for that, and that was bad. So like I can't really even put my finger on a definitive Bray Wyatt WrestleMania moment, but you'd imagine that with WrestleMania 3 months and change away, 3.5 months away now, 3 months and 3 weeks or so, that he has this in mind. WWE has this in mind. They're certainly playing the long game. And yes, he can captivate you, and he has that very rare ability of being able to captivate you. You know you're going to be captivated, but you also know at the same time, at the end of the promo, you're going to sit there and go, what the hell did he just say? And you know every time you're not going to understand about 60% of what he says, but you kind of get the gist, and I think that's what people continue to be drawn to. But yeah, the fact is that they have a long-term story arc. The rumor is that Bray has nearly full creative control over his character, which I believe. I certainly believe that. He's being himself, but in kind of a meta weird way. I will hope and pray that it is not Bray Wyatt himself as Uncle Howdy. And I don't even know what the payoff could be. I know we've projected about it. Others have as well. There's some names that are commonly floating around, Bo Dallas and Eric Rowan, Randy Orton even. Like, is there a payoff that would make sense of who the hell Uncle Howdy is? Or is that not the payoff? Is there something else that's the payoff?
It's just so convoluted when it comes to Bray Wyatt. It feels like there's just layers upon layers, and that's why I'm still interested, because I do feel I'm going to stay optimistic in this scenario. I feel rather that we're going to be swerved in a good way, and by the time it's done, we're going to be like, oh man, like they really had us here. Because I think you brought it up on your review show for the week. Like, if it just turns out to be Bo Dallas or Eric Rowan or Bray Wyatt himself, you're going to be like, really? We waited 3-4 months for that? But I don't really know exactly where the hell they're going with this. I'm holding out hope that it's something that really is worth all this time, but I still feel like getting him back in the ring is the key to really tiding us over. Because how many times is he going to come out and basically do a monologue that get interrupted by Uncle Howdy and then move on with it? Like, even LA Knight, like I think LA Knight, as we talked about a couple minutes ago, has breathed fresh air into the story and made it more stomachable for the time being, because he is that extra element and because he is a fresh face in WWE, and because just as a guy and as a wrestler and as a speaker, he is so captivating in his own way. But again, like, I thought they were going to have a match at Survivor Series. Why haven't they had a match yet? Like, why has Bray Wyatt been back for 2+ months and not gotten back in the ring? That's something that I don't understand. Like, why hasn't he wrestled yet on SmackDown or a pay-per-view?
Maybe he's not physically ready. Maybe there is something going on with the story that is going to warrant this time not being in the ring, and they're just completely focusing on character development without wrestling. But given that he's interacted with LA Knights and he's gotten a little bit physical, the only wrestling move he's been able to, I guess, muster is the headbutt he gave to LA Knight a few weeks ago, which resulted in a couple of slaps from LA Knight to Bray Wyatt, and then he randomly gets attacked, and we see the mask in the background, the mask in the background, the mask in the background, and LA Knight's accusing it's Bray Wyatt, and we're all sitting at home going, yeah, probably it could be him as an alter ego. It could be like the Three Faces of Foley deal, which we all hope to God it's not, because that would be the absolute worst conclusion to this, is it's just another alter ego that's superior to the Fiend or something bizarre. Like, that would be god awful. I don't think it is. I'm gonna go with what you're saying as far as the positivity road, because I don't want to get to the end of this and say, man, this sucked. Like, he should have gotten in the ring way earlier. This could have helped. This was a disaster that could have been avoided. I don't think that's the case, given as we've both agreed how deep he is. Sometimes deep and complex almost to a fault. And I think that's where maybe I'm getting lost and a bit disconnected from this whole thing, is like, he's so deep and so complex in his thoughts that we're watching play out on air, that I'm getting kind of lost in the spider webs, so to speak, of his brain, and I don't know where to go, so I just disconnect. And I think that's, to me, what it is, outside of being impatient for this story to just get to the next chapter, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be the final payoff, just something moving forward. Is just, I feel like I'm in the brain of Bray Wyatt, which is a fun place to be, but kind of in short bursts, because it's so exhausting to be in there.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Triple H has kind of given him free reign on this for the most part. And maybe that's gotten away from Bray Wyatt a little, like it kind of like the prisoner running the asylum type of thing. And look, again, I still want to hold out positive hope here that it will be a massive payoff. And, in a couple months' time, like, oh my God, can you believe that we were actually complaining about this? Because I remember just like not even 3 months ago, we were talking about how great that return was and how excited we were. And I felt that way right up until Survivor Series. And I remember thinking, when Survivor Series came and went, and he didn't even appear on the show, let alone have a match, I thought maybe him and LA Knight would have a brawl or something. And just nothing really happened to advance that story. I was just like, that's weird, man. Like, this is one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year, and your first big pay-per-view since returning, and you don't even appear on it, let alone have a match. I found it very, very bizarre, to be honest, and I'm starting to get a bit frustrated now because now it's just like, okay, well, I can't imagine that they're going to have him have his debut match on SmackDown, even though they should. So does that mean we have to wait all the way to the Royal Rumble for Bray Wyatt to really get back in the ring here? And even at that, you've heard things of like a pitch black match. Like, does everything with Bray Wyatt have to be a gimmick? And that's what I hope they're not doing, because then it really is what we're talking about, where we have, like, he's becoming pretty much like a movie character, which at that point, just go make horror movies or suspense movies or whatever. Like, I like that element of Bray Wyatt. I find it really, really cool, but it can't be just that.
If they have a pitch black match, I mean, that would, fans, you talk about the fans just destroying a matchup, and they should. I mean, what are we supposed to do? Just imagine the match in our minds? And you know, like, that would be so ridiculous. And now maybe it would be like a, I don't know, like just barely visible light, but I don't want to be straining my eyes to watch it. Like you said, take the gimmicks and get rid of them. I don't need gimmicks with Bray Wyatt. I mean, we've seen them completely collapse before with gimmicks of Bray Wyatt. The point where, of course, they have infamous Hell in a Cell with Seth, but also, the no selling of the Fiend got really old really quick, where he was no selling everything, and it was just, I think, just it was too much. So let's move forward here to the Royal Rumble. Now, let's assume, because we'll take the worst case scenario, that he doesn't actually wrestle until Rumble. Do you think that that Bray Wyatt comes out as an entrant in the Royal Rumble, or he has a separate match with LA Knight? Because don't forget, we still have 5-6 weeks until the Rumble, which means they could just blow this LA Knight Bray Wyatt match off if they want to have a match before the Rumble and resolve their issue. But what is your thought on what Bray Wyatt does at the Rumble? He has to be involved here. There's just no option.
I think that he and LA Knight will have a match. I don't know if it'll be a pitch black match or some gimmicky match, but I think they'll have a contest. And I think he's going to lose. And it's going to start the road to him versus Uncle Howdy, or whoever the hell Uncle Howdy is. That's my prediction, because I do think that LA Knight is a stopgap in the end. And I think this is going to be a way to propel LA Knight as a true player on the SmackDown roster, and maybe set himself up for something bigger. Like, if there's a Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania this year, I could see LA Knight going in as one of the focal points of that match. And I think Bray Wyatt will be a good launching pad for him. Although I really think he's already been a good launching pad for himself, to be honest with you. And Bray Wyatt, I think that at WrestleMania, it's gonna culminate his program with Uncle Howdy, whoever that may be. Like you said, I hope it's not a Bray Wyatt versus Bray Wyatt match where he's fighting himself like in a fantasy land. But then again, we can't put anything past it after what we saw during the pandemic era. But I do think we're going to get some clarity and some direction on where Bray Wyatt is heading by Royal Rumble. And look, I do think that once it's all said and done, we're going to be like, okay, yeah, that's a good direction. But it has to have justified all this wasted time, because if they keep more or less treading water all the way until the Rumble, that will have been like over 2 months of them just simply treading water. Like, how long has it been that it's felt like there hasn't been an advancement in Bray Wyatt's story?
At least, I mean, really since Uncle Howdy debuted. I mean, that was the last big revelation. I mean, because we've been getting the teases of Alexa Bliss, and that'll be the next thing I'll ask you. But that was really the last revelation for me. The last step was, for me, the introduction of Uncle Howdy. That was about the same time LA Knight came in, so that kind of molds together for me. But yeah, that's the last thing we got, was this introduction of the Uncle Howdy character that is trying to call Bray Wyatt out, that he, this is, we all wear masks, you're still wearing a mask, embrace who you are, trying to bring out that evil side of Bray again, instead of Bray just being Bray and suppressing his quote unquote demons, which is the Fiend or whoever. So Uncle Howdy is clearly the evil influence to try to bring back the demonic version of Bray. But I do want to ask, as I said, Alexa Bliss, I have mixed feelings on this. It's clear now, based on the things I've seen from Raw, that there is something now going on with Alexa Bliss that is related to Bray Wyatt. Last week on Raw, she attempted the Sister Abigail on Becky Lynch, I believe it was, in her triple threat match. And then she's also had in the background of her promos that, the Bray Wyatt sign, the upside down moth, whatever it is. And the one point she was mesmerized by it. There's signs here. And now it seems, especially this week, that there's something going on. What do you think? Should they do this with Alexa Bliss? What are your thoughts?
My initial response would be no, but at the same time, she's been so irrelevant for so long now that I'm just like, maybe Triple H will get it right this time around. Maybe he will find a way to kind of have the best of both worlds where Alexa Bliss stays true to herself, but she also kind of ventures off into Bray Wyatt's twisted world and maybe makes up for the bad culmination that we had at WrestleMania 36 or 37, whichever one it was. And I'm hoping that maybe Triple H can right the wrong that we saw it almost 2 years ago. Because it started off really good with Alexa Bliss, but it just turned into an unmitigated disaster. And I think in large part was because Bray Wyatt's eventual release shortly after the WrestleMania match against Randy Orton, which just turned out to be just a complete disaster. So I'm holding out hope that maybe this is a way for them to try and fix that and add the proper dimension that was maybe they originally had in mind before Vince McMahon got his grubby paws on all of it and kind of ruined it. But maybe without the Fiend, she won't have that weird alter ego, and maybe she could still be Alexa Bliss, but just with a darker and another dimension to her character. Because either way you break it down, even if you aren't stoked to see Alexa Bliss back with Bray Wyatt, you have to admit that what's going on now with Alexa Bliss is super vanilla and just a waste of her talent.
Well, the ironic thing is this. I mean, and I will fully admit this, that during her attachment with Bray, as you said, it's kind of great when it starts, and then it slowly faded. Then it's like, oh my God, she's still sitting backstage. She's still sitting on the playground. She's still, not wrestling. I mean, she didn't have a match, it feels like, for like 2 years. And we're like, get her in the ring, get her in the ring. My God. Now she's in the ring, and she's not doing anything else. And her in-ring is never a problem. It's never amazing, but it's always fine to good. She's had some really good matches. It's never the problem. But now we have the opposite problem where she's in the ring seemingly on a weekly basis, but not having any character development. No promos outside of this Bray Wyatt loose attachment. That's it. So now we are on the other end of the spectrum, and there's got to be a happy medium where, okay, fine, if she is some different version of what she was with the playground and all that, that's cool. She wants to evolve into something, but also have effing matches, because I don't want to go back to the other side and swing completely again where she's just kind of the sidekick of the Fiend. She's not having her own storyline. She's not chasing the women's championship. I mean, there's some cool things you could do with Alexa Bliss if she turns darker, maybe, to face Rhea Ripley or something. Like Rhea Ripley's, I mean, just kind of like thinking of things ahead of time here. And I don't know. I want some happy medium, because we've gotten two extremes with the Alexa Bliss version over the last 4 years, I feel like.
Well, for you, what would be the ideal direction for Alexa Bliss? Would you kind of bring her back to the goddess version that we saw her explode onto the scene in WWE back in like 2016, 2017?
I would take that over this. I mean, I would take that over what we're seeing now. She got more promo time. She was relevant. Of course, back then, the competition of the women's division was not as intense as it is now, and they didn't have the depth of the women that they do now. Now, there's still a ton of work to be done with the women's division, but I would take that over just kind of being, I mean, you listen to the reaction. Like Alexa Bliss on Raw last week and in the weeks prior has, she's kind of like the fans are like, oh, wow, yeah, Alexa Bliss, hey, what's going on? It's very mild. It's not negative. It's just like, hey, what's going on, buddy? It's just kind of ho-hum vanilla, but like they still like her, but they don't have a whole lot of emotional attachment to her because she's got nothing going on. She's just like the third wheel in a group where she'll go along with the baby faces to help even out the odds of the heels. She doesn't have anything individual. Now, I've said that up until this point because things have happened on Raw and have over the last couple of weeks, hints are being shown that she's going to have her own story with Bray. But I would take any version over just the vanilla, here comes Alexa. This, she's a really good promo. We're wasting we're not doing anything with her talent wise. We're not doing anything with her character wise. She's just been kind of there, and that's the worst thing you can do.
And I think that she really was kind of establishing herself with maybe not quite up there with like the Baileys and the Beckys and the Charlottes of the world, but like I thought Alexa back in 2017, 2018, like she was really a top player in the WWE women's division, and we just really haven't seen that since pre-pandemic era. Like it felt like as soon as she hitched her wagon to Nikki Cross, it was just a downward spiral and she never really recovered from it. And I think that she's kind of like a talent that so many years have gone by where you're just like, man, are you losing that magic that you had back in 2017 and 2018? Like, are people just kind of inherently forgetting what she did back then because it's just been so long? Like, do you think it's getting to a point with Alexa Bliss that it's becoming a point of no return or a do or die type of moment?
I don't think she's that far gone. I mean, the fans adore Alexa Bliss as a whole. She very rarely has gotten booed throughout her career. She was good as a heel for, a short period, but the fans just gravitate to her because she's not very physically imposing. So she doesn't have that going for her that a typical monster heel would or anything. She just looks like she'd be kind of friendly and nice, and of course she's really nice to look at. If you're a guy, it's like, well, yeah, that doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. But she's also very believable in her promos. She's got, to me, like a Zelina Vega vibe on promos. Both of them are they're just so believable. Like, I don't know, there's just something about when Alexa Bliss speaks. Not every time, but most times. She's just got this authenticity to her where I just like believe what she's saying, even if she's in a garbage storyline. Her promos, I think, are underrated. Just for how she is and the way she presents her promos, I've always been a fan of. So I don't think it's too late. No, she's been on the back burner. It's not like they're doing damage and, squashing her for months and months and months. She's just kind of there. And I think if you bring her back into the spotlight, as they're starting to do seemingly, I think you can easily repair her. But it's going to take work. It's going to take time and consistency. Like, they can't just do this for a couple weeks and then say, oh, yep, all good here. Nothing to see. They need to consistently do something with Alexa Bliss that is sustainable, if it's with Bray Wyatt or whoever. But no, I don't think she's permanently damaged.
So one question I wanted to ask you before we wrap it up on a State of WWE way. In terms of my retro show that I did last week, I was curious your opinion on it because when I told you that I was covering Invasion, you said that you had completely forgot about the pay-per-view. Now that I covered it, do you have any positive, negative, or just lukewarm opinions looking back on that pay-per-view from, 21 years ago?
Yeah. Positive for sure. Because back in 2001, I was 16 years old. 16 years old. It was just for me like, oh, wrestling's on. You just kind of went with whatever. Now that I'm 21 years later, looking back on a pay-per-view that I watched when I was 16, you look at it through a different lens, and your review of the event, and also getting me to go back and watch. I didn't watch every single match, but I watched the main event, Austin turning, all that, trying to double down on his heel turn that still didn't work. And Austin refers to that time in his career as a quote unquote black hole. Like, he doesn't even remember a whole lot about that story or a whole lot about that time in his career. Just because he said it was an odd time for him professionally, personally. He was drinking a lot. That didn't help. But going back to your question, yeah, it made me look back on it with a different appreciation of the talent that we had, because you and I have said this a couple of weeks in a row now, but it's true. Like, okay, we didn't have all the star power we wanted. We went over that. But you also were able to still see DDP, Rob Van Dam, the Dudleys coming in from ECW. Like, you were able to see a lot of stars that still hold water today, and some of them are in the Hall of Fame today. It gave Booker T a main event push when he didn't have to get overshadowed by, Hogan or Nash or Hall or Goldberg or Sting. And of course, Ric Flair coming in afterwards and being the co-GM of Raw and all that fun stuff. But it gave me a new appreciation because I was able to look at it through a lens of 21 years now older and looking back and going, wow, like I forgot about this, I forgot about that, I forgot about this. Overall, I think it was a positive experience for me.
Yeah, I think so too. Like it was one thing going back and thinking about like the dream match that should have been like Rock, Austin, Triple H, Taker, and maybe like Kurt Angle on one side, and like the NWO Goldberg and Sting looking back on the other. But it still was cool to see that they kind of did what the best they could given the cards they were dealt.
No, exactly. And, you forget that. I'm glad you brought that up. Just a quick point about Triple H, him being injured essentially the whole time with that infamous quad injury and all that. And it was just the fact that Triple H missed a lot of that is kind of awkward, and it doesn't make sense. I mean, but injuries happen. So anyway, yeah, check that out. I would agree, and let everyone know about your retro show coming up this week if you have a topic in mind, or maybe you'll keep us guessing.
Yeah, like I'm not completely sure if I'm gonna go with this, but you know what? The hell with it. I'm gonna just lock myself in.
You're
right
committed
here.
now, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Well, that was Invasion was actually 2 weeks ago, and I actually covered Armageddon 2003 this past Friday. They all kind of mixed together in my brain. But I'm actually going to do a show to build off of Invasion, and that's when The Rock came back and chose Team WWF. I'm going to kind of cover how they got to that point, why The Rock was away in the initial part of the Invasion angle in the first place, and what kind of impact it had for the rest of the Invasion angle that kind of spread all the way until Survivor Series 2001.
I have that moment in my head. I won't spoil anything for anybody that hasn't seen it or doesn't really remember. It's a fun moment, yes, I will, and they built that so well, and I'll just say one thing, this isn't spoiling anything, The Rock's belt buckle, I don't know why that's firmly in my mind of what that night was like with the belt buckle, but great topic, I'm looking forward to that, and I encourage everyone to go watch or listen to Retro last week with Armageddon, the previous week with Invasion, this coming week with that moment with The Rock choosing Team WWF and all of the lead up to that. And looking forward to it. And again, it's gonna crawl. But here's the thing. I mean, I'm saying, oh my God, it's 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 5 weeks. But like once we get to like 3 weeks before the Rumble, and Christmas is over and all that, like it's gonna fly through. So like we're crawling right now. If we can get through this part of a wrestling season as fans, I think we're good.
Yeah, I agree with that, and we're hopefully somewhere along the line between now and the Rumble, we'll have something more positive to talk about in the way of Bray Wyatt. I
hope so, and I want everyone to know, like we still like the story. It's just I think we're just ready to continue to move if we can here. So, all right, well, very good. I'm looking forward to your retro show this week, and you enjoy your night.
You too, man. Take it easy.
Do you wish you had some kind of cheat guide before you became an adult? Things that school or maybe your parents don't teach you? Then check out the book called Adulting 101, My First Apartment and Car. Just search Adulting 101, My First Apartment and Car on Amazon. You can find it there. And it's about the basic things that we take for granted, like the common skill of checking apartment complexes at night before you sign your lease, or doing a background check on your roommate before you move in together, or not co-signing for something. The book is designed to help those parents or guardians help their young ones transition from their home successfully. Whether that is getting a roommate, how to spot a really crappy landlord, or how not to buy an awful car, these are some of the things that they've learned throughout their own personal experiences. So check out Adulting 101, My First Apartment and Car on Amazon, and give your kids the cheat codes to things that we wish we had. Check out Adulting 101, Things I Wish I Knew, My First Apartment. It's available on Amazon or at stoverconsulting.net. That's STOVER consulting.net. It has a ton more information on that website. Go check it out today.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.